Lately, I've been seeing this message everywhere. It's the message that says, quite literally, you're not angry enough. We need to be more angry. I even saw one recently that said, if you're not angry, you're part of the problem. Mic drop. Oh, goodness. And look, I want to talk about that today because I get it. I do. There's a part of me that really does understand. Okay. There is a lot going on in the world right now. There's a lot happening to be angry about. I'm not going to lie and say there's not. It's all peaches and no, there's a lot of craziness going on. And it does make sense that we are collectively angry. I get it. There's social injustices happening legitimately right in front of our face. There's a new war to worry about. There's people's rights being violated left and right. And speaking of the left and right, they're fighting as if, I don't know, both sides are rooting for civil war. It's literally at that place where the fighting is so bad. It's so intense. It's so heavy from both sides. It makes it feel like civil war is the only logical next step. And I mean, closer to home, there's truthfully, there's more things to be, uncertain about. There's more uncertainty than ever. I mean, maybe ever before. There's the questions that we ask that are real, genuine questions like, how am I going to make ends meet? How do you send your kid to school and know that they're safe? That's a big one, folks. Will you even have a job tomorrow? Right? That's one I hear. I hear these conversations almost daily. And I'm not talking about these are conversations I'm engaging in. I'm talking about I am just out. I'm standing in line at the post office waiting to mail a package. And I hear the guys in front of me talking about how scared they are that they're going to lose their jobs. I'm, in Safeway checking out the melons. And, they're talking about how her kid is afraid to go to school and she doesn't know what to do. I mean, these are real things. And it's happening all around us. I'm hearing them almost daily. And when you think about these things, about this stuff going on and you get angry, it feels better than feeling helpless. And listen, I don't just mean a little bit better. I mean significantly better. Because helplessness, ew, helplessness is fucking heavy. It's hard to carry. It's uncomfortable on a good day. It sits in your chest, on your chest. It makes you feel like you can't breathe. It doesn't give you anywhere to go. But anger moves, babe. Anger moves. It gives you energy. It is energy. It is the embodiment of energy, right? It's it gives you something to do with what you're feeling. Even if that doing is just arguing in the comments section on Facebook. Or even if that doing is just venting for 35 minutes about the same thing you've vented about before. Even if that doing is, getting worked up in conversations over and over and over again, getting in mild arguments with your coworkers, it's still doing something. It feels like movement. And movement feels like control. That's why anger feels like action, even when you're not actually doing anything. It's like movement without going anywhere. But here's the thing. Here's the issue. Anger is a secondary emotion. It's real, sure. You're really feeling anger. That's not fake, but it's not the root. Anger is secondary. The primary emotion, the root, is being ignored because the anger covers it up. Anger shows up to protect you from the emotions that are harder to face. Things like fear, pain, uncertainty, worry, anxiety, those kinds of things, helplessness, as I mentioned. Those are all emotions that can be extraordinarily hard to cope with. And if you don't have the tools, you don't have the self-awareness to process those things, to process those emotions, anger's going to step in and take over. It's how we're built. It's nature's GPS. Emotions aren't the bad guy. They're not the devil. Emotions are beautiful. They're there for a reason, but you have to be able to discern why they're there. And anger is one of those that comes up to show us something else. Anger's never the thing that's number one. It's always covering up something else. And the truth is, the world we're living in right now is absolutely feeding that day in and day out. You want to know what's going on? Okay, you go watch the news. But you may not realize that the news is actually designed, literally designed to keep you afraid because fear keeps you watching. Fear keeps you engaged. Fear boosts their ratings. It's not just the news anymore. It's social media, it's your feed, it's the algorithm-driven outrage that you are building a life around, that you're so used to seeing, you don't even see it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you scroll for 5 minutes and suddenly you have seen something devastating, something that made your blood boil, something divisive that made you feel stronger about another group or a side or an argument, made you feel more against these people or those over and over and over again, even 5 minutes of that, and you've already fed the fear monster. And your body doesn't know the difference. This is really important, guys. Listen, your body doesn't know the difference between something happening all the way across the world and something happening right in front of you, in your family, in your life, in your room. It doesn't. It doesn't know the difference. It just registers threat. It registers threat, threat, threat over and over and over. And then we wonder why we constantly feel on edge. Like we can't handle the smallest thing without snapping and going feral because, we were already on edge. All it took was just that one thing to bump us over and we can't figure out why. When you're in that state, you're not thinking clearly. And please don't try to argue. It's science. You're not. You're really not. I've heard people go, no, I think even more clear when I'm angry. No, you don't. No, you don't. She doesn't. He doesn't. I don't. Nobody does. Why? Because you're not in the right part of your brain to be thinking clearly. It doesn't work like that. You cannot be in a rage state, in an anger state, in your amygdala and thinking clearly. Because the amygdala, it's your brain's, it's like your emotional alarm system. It's your brain's blaring, glaring, neon flashing lights threat system, threat detector system, whatever. It's triggering your fight or flight. That's what the amygdala is for. And at the same time, it suppresses your prefrontal cortex. It's a double whammy. The prefrontal cortex is the part that's responsible for rational thought, for decision making, for impulse control. That's prefrontal cortex. Okay? You're not in this area anymore. You're back here. So, no, you're not thinking clearly. You're not sharper when you're mad. No, nobody is. You can't be. You're not in your thinking brain anymore. You have transferred, you've packed your bags and taken a fucking trip to survival mode. Okay? That's the worst place ever you could possibly be to try to solve any kind of problem, much less one that's complex. You don't have a prayer. There's no way. I think a lot of people really do believe their anger is helping. Like, if I'm angry, it means I care. If I'm angry, it means I'm paying attention, right? It means I'm not just an ostrich with my head in the sand, right? If I'm angry, I'm on the right side of things. I'm justified in my anger because I'm in the right. And to a certain extent, I do understand how that could feel accurate, how you could feel like, well, I'm angry and therefore I'm not a part of the problem. That feels better, right? That means I'm doing something right. But caring and being constantly activated, not the same thing. Okay? They're not. I'm sorry, they're not. Awareness and reactivity, again, not the same thing. And if your emotional state is constantly dysregulated, Like you're all over the place. You're mad more than you're anything else. You're upset about the stuff going on all the time. It's on your mind all the time. You're not being more effective than Joe Blow down the street. You're just more exhausted. Like you're just the one that's more tired. Underneath all of it is fear. Fear of what's happening, fear of what might happen, fear of not being able to control any of it. That's a really hard place to sit in. It's a very, very difficult to say, I feel unstable. I feel uncertain. I don't know what's next. That's scary. And it's a very, very hard thing to sit with. So most of the time, people don't. We go to anger instead. And there's another piece of this that we really don't talk about very much. And that's that anger doesn't, even when you feel anger, it doesn't go where it belongs a lot of the time. In fact, most of the time it doesn't. Because the real source, the real reason that you are feeling this rage, it's not always accessible. It's not always tangible. You can't yell at the economy. I mean, you can, but it's not going to be very effective, right? Like, you can't argue with uncertainty. And in fact, I have friends with major anxiety that tell me that that just makes it worse. When you try to argue with your own brain, it just makes it worse. You can't fight fear itself. Like, it's not tangible. You can't get into a fucking fist fight with it. So your nervous system, guess what happens? When you get mad and you don't have the target in front of you to beat up on, your nervous system looks for somewhere else to put it. It looks for someone else oftentimes to become the target. And it usually lands on whoever is the closest. Whoever's the safest, right? Whoever you know won't leave or whoever you know can't leave, right? Things that you know will survive and you just unload on it. Sometimes it's just the thing that's most available, and your nervous system is like, well, it's right there. May as well do it. Even if that person had nothing to do with it. And let's be real, most of the time, they didn't. Sometimes, but usually not really. I've seen this in my own life play out in real time, both from me and towards me. Here in this city, I have had someone try to literally run me off the road. Wild as fuck. It was one of the craziest situations I've ever been in driving. It was insane. I didn't even know what to do. I ended up parking my car in the middle of a crazy busy road and just sat there because I didn't know what else to do. Because this lunatic was in front of me literally trying to force me off the road. It was so aggressive, it was unreal. It was dangerous. It was so dangerous. I had my kids in the car. It was crazy. And it was for no apparent reason. Why this was so crazy was not like a weird, insane episode of road rage where we both just lashed out at each other. Nothing happened. Nothing even happened. And yet this person went batshit crazy on me. And in that moment, it was easy to think, and even like talking about it now, I just said the person went batshit crazy. He's a lunatic in front of me, right? I'm using all these pejoratives to like describe this person, but the reality is like it's so easy to think, what the hell is wrong with that person? Oh my God, this lunatic. I just said it, right? We can say all those things and think all those things. It's so easy. But the truth is, what happened that day with me and this crazy, not crazy car in front of me was that it had nothing to do with me. It couldn't have, because nothing happened. There was no lead up. I didn't know this person. I'd never seen this person before in my life. I didn't cut this person off. I did nothing. I still to this day don't know how it happened. Neither one of my kids know what could have possibly sent this person off the deep end. No idea. So I know for a fact it had nothing to do with me. But I was there. That's it. That's the end. I was there. I was the closest thing to them in the moment that they snapped. I was the closest target for whatever it was that they were carrying. Their stress, their rage, obviously, probably over their stress, their life in general, who knows? Whatever it was that they were carrying, they dumped it all on the person in front of them. Yeah, girl. Because I was there. We like to think that we're different. Like, we're all like, oh my God, what a psycho. I would never. We like to think that we're so different. We're not. We're not. Because as I said, I've done it before too. I remember this one time, my child knocked my tea out of my hands, and I went absolutely feral. I flipped the fuck out. Like, literally, like, just was like yelling like I was some kind of psychopath. And in that moment, it felt justified. The tea was spilled all over my clothes. It's made a huge mess. I'm in a hurry. Now I'm going to be late. I felt all the things that were so justified. But the reality here is, the honest truth is, it had nothing to do with the tea. I was angry at my boss in that space and time. I was angry at my financial situation. I was so stressed about some bills that I had to pay that I didn't see a way out of. I didn't see how I was going to make ends meet. All these things that we go through, and I was so angry that first my boss got to be my target in my own head because, well, it's their fault that I'm not making more money, isn't it? And there's a story behind that, but don't we all have the story, right? But underneath that, and here's the truth, this is the whole message that I'm trying to get across. Underneath that anger at my boss was fear. It was fear about my job. It was fear about my stability, about the bills that I mentioned. How am I going to pay them? If this job goes, if it doesn't work out, how am I ever going to pay the bills that I'm already having a hard time paying? I was scared about what was going to happen next. I was scared about all those things, and I was carrying that fear all day, every day, and through the night. And I didn't process any of that. I didn't sit with any of that. I didn't face any of that. And so it came out just sideways, just on my own child. Somebody who didn't even remotely deserve it. Somebody who accidentally knocked a tea out of another human being's hands. Wild, right? And I remember after that, I will never forget how awful I felt. I don't remember exactly what I yelled about or what I said, but I do remember how horrible, how absolutely horrible, how just I was a wretched human, not to mention a terrible, worthless mom. Those feelings, right? I remember those. I remember all of that so clearly, not just because of what happened, but because after the fact, and actually this is probably why I remember it so clearly, not just because of how terrible it was that I yelled at my kid for this, but like because after I could look back at the situation now, I can look back at the situation and I can see it so clearly. It's so clear, it's painful, it almost hurts. It was never about him. It was never about the tea. It was never about my clothes. It wasn't about being late. It wasn't about the mess on the floor. It was never about him. And I think we all have moments like that. I would venture to say we do all have moments like that where we realize too late, a little bit too late, that we were reacting to all the things we hadn't dealt with, not this thing in the moment, right? Not the guy that cut us off in traffic, not the barista that got the order wrong, or even the barista that got the order right, but she was 2 minutes past the time that you thought she should have had it done. We didn't deal with all this other stuff. And so this thing became the outlet. It became the target. It became it's your fault. Let me just release it all on you. This is what happens when we don't deal with stuff that's actually underneath the anger. Because remember, the anger's secondary. The anger's here. The root, that's underneath. I don't know what a good analogy is. Under, for, before, whatever. But like the anger is secondary. It's not the root cause. And these explosions, these moments of feeling really horrible. I look back, I'm like, that guy that tried to run me off the road, maybe he doesn't, but I would like to think that today he probably feels pretty embarrassed about that. I mean, he's had 4 years-ish to deal with it. So to think about it, like I tried to kill a lady on the road just because I was mad. Because I was mad because I don't know. I saw her car and thought she looked like somebody I knew. I don't know. Whatever it is, like he's had years to ruminate on this. And I really do believe that he probably looks back on that and goes, "Well, whoops." Nobody saw that, right? Like he probably feels like borderline shame about it. I would. I do. The situations like that I have engaged in, I do feel like shame is maybe too strong, but but I do feel embarrassed about him. But that's what happens when we don't deal with the root cause of it. When we don't deal with what's underneath the anger, it doesn't disappear. It gets redirected. It gets misplaced. It gets projected onto other people who are just there by no fault of theirs. Unprocessed pain does not disappear. It just changes direction. And thinking of that, like when you think about that concept, you hold that concept into your mind and that understanding, you absorb that concept, that understanding. Now zoom out. Millions of people. Millions of people carrying that fear, that uncertainty, that overwhelm, and just never really processing it. Carrying all those issues from their own personal life, their life at home, the life inside them, the stuff going on in here when they go to bed at night. None of that stuff being dealt. None of that stuff being faced, or in a lot of cases, even acknowledged. Never actually processing it. Just staying in a state of dysregulation, just staying with, just living with your nervous system so activated. All the time, you're in a constant state of fight or flight, staying angry, and then just releasing that anger on whoever is closest, whoever's within arm's reach, or, metaphorical arm's reach online. That happens so often. There's no way a human could count that. There's not an algorithm out there that has ever been designed that could count the number of times somebody has lashed out online over some comment or a meme or a picture that they saw that happened to just be the target for all that craziness that they haven't dealt with. Not to mention the stuff that happens in public, in person. I mean, I already mentioned, right? I keep bringing up, I feel like I've said it in other episodes too, the barista at Starbucks. I don't even go to Starbucks, by the way, but like I used to a lot. I was a regular Starbucks girl and I don't drink coffee anymore. But when I did, I was there all the time. And it happened more times than I'm actually even comfortable with that I would watch somebody just flip out about the weirdest things. And back then I didn't really know, I didn't really understand what I'm talking about now, this concept, right? I didn't understand that they were really upset about something else and they were just taking it out on Debbie or whatever. But I remember over and over every time I'd just be like, damn, dude, chill. She forgot the whip. Just put a little on top. Like, it's not a big deal. Oh, there's cinnamon right there. Just add it yourself, dude. You're not helpless. Like, I couldn't understand why people were freaking out. Why is it a coffee shop that gets so many of these? But Safeway, too. I use that one as an example because I've seen that one multiple times, too, where just random things. I'm just watching somebody and I'm like horrified at this behavior. And also, ironically, not connecting it to my own explosions. You just, when you're not aware, you're not aware. But I remember just looking at them and be like, what is wrong with you? He didn't do anything. And then I'd go home and flip out at my kid because he spilled my tea. You know what I mean? We've all been doing it for so long. Like, until you become self-aware of it, until you really work on that level of awareness, it just keeps happening. And this is what's going on in the world. Like I said, from that zoomed out perspective, you've got millions of people doing this every day in public, online, in their own homes, to their kids, to their wives or their husbands. That's not creating change. That is literally not changing anything that you're afraid about or worried about. It's just spreading damage. So, like, what do we do instead? What do we do instead, right? Because I'm not saying don't care. When I see these, you're not mad enough, like you're part of the problem if you're not angry. I know what's happening. I know these people are desperate for change. They want change. They want things to be different. And I'm not saying they shouldn't be, and I'm not saying don't care. I'm not saying, well, don't be angry, just don't care about it. That's not the solution. Apathy is not the solution either, okay? What I'm saying is there's a different way to show up, okay? A way that doesn't burn you out emotionally, a way that doesn't disconnect you completely from yourself. There's a way where you can actually think clearly enough to respond instead of react. We've all heard that, right? Like, oh, I want to respond and not react. Like, and then we just go on reacting. But there's a way to do that. And it starts with awareness. Literally, it may not be sexy. That may not be the answer that you were looking for, a 3-step trick. No, but it is true. It starts with awareness. It starts with asking, what am I actually feeling right now? That's it. That's the question you start with. And before you go, I'm mad, that's what I feel. Yes, but what's underneath that? Not the loudest emotion. When you ask yourself, what am I actually feeling right now? Don't go with the loudest emotion because that's not the one. That's not the real one. What's underneath that? That's the real one. And when you identify that, when you find, like, if you go, okay, I hate this person and I'm sitting in traffic, I'm honking, fuck you. And you're flipping them off and you're mad as hell. And you stop, you go, whoa, whoa, whoa. Corey said to ask, what am I actually feeling? I'm feeling mad, but that's the loudest. So that's not it. What am I actually feeling? I'm feeling stressed. Okay. Keep digging, keep going. What am I stressed about? Well, I'm stressed that I'm not going to get to work on time. Okay. Keep going. Well, what will that mean? What will that say about me? What will that mean about me as a person if I get to work on time? Well, nothing, but it does mean that I might get in trouble with my boss. Okay. And then keep going, keep digging. What does that mean? What's the problem with your boss getting you in trouble? Well, the problem is that that feels like a threat to your security. That's your job. That's your income. What's really happening is that you are feeling anxious. You're feeling uncertain. You are feeling a threat to your stability. That's what's going on. And when you ask that and then you dig until you get the real root of what's going on, it's easier to see that your reaction, the anger, the rage, first of all, a lot of times that rage goes away on its own. When you finally name it, when you finally understand what's really happening, most of the time, the anger goes away on its own. It just kind of goes away. It's like a nagging toddler. Mommy, mom, 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 mama, mom, mommy, mom. And then you're like, what? And he's like, hi. And you're like, thanks, kid. Thank you. Hi. Right? It's like that. They just want attention, right? They just want your attention just for a minute. Anger's like that a lot of times. It just wants your attention. You've given it your attention. And the reason it wanted your attention is to point you to the real thing you're feeling. And so if you're like, I'm pissed off. What am I really mad about? You dig, you dig, you dig, you dig. You get to the root. The anger most of the time goes away on its own. And if it doesn't, it's usually because you haven't really figured out the root yet. And if you're like, no, I dug and I dug and I dug and I'm still pissed, okay, that may be it. But I doubt you're going to still think that honking and screaming and flipping off the guy in front of you in traffic is the answer. You just see it differently. The anger, it lands differently. It hits different. It's not the same kind of rage. I think because this is my belief, because once we've identified this is the thing I'm mad at, the target shifts. Like, I'm no longer mad at you because you're just some old lady driving to, I don't know, probably like the doctor or something. And I'm like honking my horn like you're a terrorist. Like, that's stupid. I don't want to do that anymore. I'm actually mad about my job. I'm actually mad because I'm unhappy at my job and I've been there for way too long, but I'm too scared to quit because I don't know what else I could do. That's what I'm mad at. And so even if the anger doesn't completely dissipate, I doubt you're going to keep going and hogging at this old lady because it doesn't make sense to you anymore. It doesn't feel right to you anymore. And not in terms of like a moral right. It doesn't feel correct. Like, it just doesn't. It's like, what? Why would I be yelling at her? It's like I'm going to turn around and yell at my dog because I broke the window. Like, that doesn't make any sense. What? Like, no. And so that's where we start, right? If we want to actually create change, I know it sounds trite. It sounds a little cliched, but it starts here with me. I'm not going to change anything by being mad at the world. I'm going to change everything by figuring out what it is that I'm actually mad about. Bottom line is this: anger is not saving us. It's not. It's just keeping everybody activated. We don't need more activation. Y'all, listen, this world does not need more activation. That's the last thing we need, okay? We need awareness. We need more regulation. We need people who can stay steady enough, who can stay calm enough. And in their prefrontal cortex, you remember that part? We need people that can stay there long enough to actually think, to actually act with intention, to actually solve problems, to come up with solutions. That's what we need. So, no, I'm sorry, Facebook. We don't need more anger. No, we don't. And if you're not angry, you're not part of the problem. Sorry, not sorry. You need to be more present, not more angry. You need to be more grounded, more honest about what's going on underneath it to cause that anger. So the question isn't, are you angry enough? The question is, are you aware enough? Because anger is fucking loud. Anger is the loudest. Anger gets everybody's attention immediately, usually. But awareness is what actually creates change. And maybe, just maybe, that's the detour. Welcome.